Hello and welcome to the 164forever.com Overeaters Anonymous 101 podcast for newcomers. My name is Carol. I'm a compulsive eater, and I am here with my recovery pals, my recovery posse, Rebecca A.
Hiya, I'm Rebecca A. from London in the UK, recovered compulsive overeater.
And my more local pal, who's a little closer than me, Paul G.
Hey, this is Paul G. from Huntington Beach, California, and recovered compulsive overeater, and really happy to be here with all of you.
And our special guest is Nancy P.
Hi, Carol. Thanks for asking me to speak. My name is Nancy P. I'm a member of Overeaters Anonymous since 1971. Believe it or not, I know I only look 29, but I've been 1971.
In this, this is a podcast for compulsive eaters and anyone who has a problem with food or harms themselves with food or food behaviors. There's a lot of 12-step recovery groups that focus on food addiction. I think there's well over 100, but we the four of us here happen to be members of Overeaters Anonymous, although we don't speak for them or represent them. That's just the truth of what's going on here. So you can reach us if you'd like more information or to talk about what's going on with you and food. We have an email address, and it is 164forever@gmail.com. And we'd love to hear your feedback on the podcast, or if you're a newcomer and you just want to reach out and ask a few questions. We would love that. We also have a WhatsApp group. So if you're on the WhatsApp app, that link to our WhatsApp group, along with the email address, will be in the description below the podcast, as well as links to our YouTube channel and our Podbean channel. If you're on Podbean, it's OA164forever@podbean.com. Last week, we talked about the 9 tools. So if you're interested in hearing more about the 9 tools of OA or any of our previous recordings, just check out the channel on YouTube or Podbean. You're going to see all the other podcasts in there. And today, we're going to talk about a very controversial topic. You're going to love it or you're going to hate it. It's the topic of higher power. Some call him a him, or a god, or a goddess, or they, or them, or the universe, or the flow of life, or nature. Or gravity, perhaps, is your higher power. I've heard people say a cat is their higher power. I have a lot of issues with that one, but I'll keep them to myself. Some people already come in feeling pretty comfortable using the word God. Some people cringe at the mere mention of the G word. For some people, the topic of higher power is literally a sticking point that they refuse to move past. But the topic doesn't have to keep you from recovering from compulsive eating. There are a lot of atheists, agnostics. There's people of just about every religious or spiritual or whatever you want to call it viewpoint. All I can say is I saw a little meme online somewhere, a little image that said, there's a ball of fire in the sky that warms our planet. There's a moon that controls our oceans and seas. And you somehow have trouble thinking of a power greater than yourself. And that kind of said it all. There's definitely powers greater than me at work in the universe. And the higher power can be that simple. We are not experts. We're babies in recovery. Like, I just met a lady who's got 45 years of abstinence, another lady who has 50 years of abstinence. We are nobodies. We are baby people in Overeaters Anonymous. So we're definitely not experts. And thank you for listening to us talk. First, I think Rebecca went first last week. So I thought that we would start with Paul G. Paul, what is your take on the whole higher power thing? You want to go first?
That sounds great. Just to segue what you were just saying, I like in the big book, the last page of the first 164 pages says, "We know little." And I like to preface anything that I have to say is that I know less than little. So, but what I do know is my experience. And so I just would like to share my experience and my experience with a higher power that I call God. I've heard some people say God, G-O-D, is good orderly direction. And I kind of like to remember that, because that's one of the reasons that I need a higher power. And, sometimes I say higher power, sometimes they say God, sometimes I say a higher power I call God. Um, and maybe I'll start, when I was a kid, I was raised in a faith, and they told me who God was. They told me what God did, what God didn't do, what I was supposed to do, what I wasn't supposed to do. And it was very regimented, and I was invited to believe exactly that. Um, and as I got older, I didn't really get it. I didn't have an experience of that God in my life. And no matter what I did, I mean, I was in my church, I was the head of the administrative council. I was a Eucharistic minister. I was involved in the men's group, and I never had what I thought other people had. And they talked about a personal relationship with a God, and I didn't have that. I didn't know what I was doing wrong, but I knew that I didn't have it. Although I might try and look like I had it to you. So, when I look at right before I came back to OA, I had a friend who was an atheist, and he kept on posting this stuff on social media about, how foolish it is to think of God, and how foolish it is to think of X, Y, and Z, that, some higher power could do that. And I was really starting to pay attention because, um, my son had just had a stroke at 40. And I thought, why the heck would a God do that to someone? That just really makes things suck for him, and it changed the nature of my life. And then about 18 months later, he died, and I was really pissed off. I clearly didn't understand this God, and I didn't have any faith that that power could do anything for me, because clearly I thought I was a good person. I didn't do everything right. I made lots of mistakes, but that guy wasn't in my court at all. And but the interesting thing is that certainly after my son's death, I was desperate for a connection to a God, to a higher power, because I was lost. I was literally lost. I was shoveling in the food. I was, you know, absorbed in Netflix. I was doing everything I could to not feel the grief and numb myself. And I didn't know what the answer was. So, long and short, I came back, I started working the steps. And the first thing that happened was I heard people talking about this, and I heard that the steps are a spiritual solution. And I wanted that spiritual solution. And I just started working the steps. I was directed, I think, to a big book sponsor. And I can catalog the many gifts that I was given in program, and some of them were small and some of them were huge, that got me to where I am today, where I do have a relationship with a higher power I call God. And the sponsors started guiding me through the big book. And I see this when I work with people, and I experienced it, is that there's a transformation that went on for me that I can't really explain, that happens during the mechanical process of working the steps according to the big book. And, we started working on step 2, and he invited me to do a job description for my higher power, for God. Everything God, I want God to do, and everything I don't want God to do. And I did that. And, you could say I fired my old concept of God in the clouds, beard, lightning bolts, judgment. He's going to review everything wrong I ever did on the day that, on Judgment Day, and I'm going to be shamed. And oh my gosh, he just was a pretty scary guy. but yet he's the one that I went to for everything I needed. I'm supposed to ask him for everything I needed. And oh, by the way, I don't always get it. So anyway, I went and I did that, and I finished it, and I read it to my sponsor, and he said, I give you permission for that to be your higher power. And I was shocked. I thought I was asking for way more than what I could get. And he just says, yeah, that's your concept of your higher power. Run with it. And you know what? It's different than yours. It's different than what I learned about as a kid. It's different than my next door neighbor. It's different than what they teach about in church. It's different. And I don't want it to be the same as yours. I just want it to be a God that I can go to, that I can turn my will and my life over, because I am a really, really, really terrible God. I have so much experience that I can rely on to show me that when I try and run the show is never going to be a hit. It's always going to be a flop. So that journey, it was a transformation that I can't explain, and I don't know really how to tell you to get it, other than to work the steps, to have a guide, to realize that lack of power is my dilemma. I have to have a power greater than myself to turn to. And for me, I have a name. For you, I invite that, it's whatever you choose it to be. And the way that I keep that alive today is by living and doing certain steps. And every day I spend time trying to connect with my higher power. Whether I invite my higher power into my life, or I ask my higher power to invite me in, it's like this podcast is my higher power's podcast. It's not ours. This day is my higher power's day. It's not mine. We're throwing a party for my wife this weekend for her 60th birthday. It's his party. In my concept, it's his party. So with that, I'm going to pass, and I really appreciate, one, that I have a higher power, and two, that I can share it with you. Thanks.
Oh, Paul, thank you. I love making little personal t-shirts online, and now I want a t-shirt that says "Terrible God." Wouldn't that be a great t-shirt? I would totally wear that to Trader Joe's.
Oh God.
Yeah, terrible God, terrible God. Rebecca, would you like to take it from here?
Yeah, thanks a million. Yeah, I loved what you were saying, Paul. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I was thinking before we started this, oh, great. The topic is higher power. And I don't really have to do anything because that's my higher powers topic. Great. There's nothing really to think about. But yeah, the bit that it always reminds me of when we think about higher power and God is in step 2 in the big book. It's in We Agnostics, and it's on page 53. It's like the middle of the page. Like, either God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? And coming into that, reading that, and realizing that maybe, oh, I don't have a higher power, I don't have a relationship with a higher power yet. It's kind of scary. But breaking that down, for me, it's kind of like, I either believe that there's a power that can help me recover, or I don't. And it's just that willingness to believe that there's a power greater than me, something that can help me recover. That's the start that we're making. And I loved what you were saying, Paul, about, or maybe Carol was saying it, about there being a sun in the sky and a moon. These are powers greater than we are, and I think if we have that seed of a belief that we can get well, and that there is a force in our world, whether we call it the name of a deity, or we just call it high power, or we call it good orderly direction, or whether it's kind of peace and loyalty, whatever. If we believe that there's something that has that seed of wellness and healing, that's enough for us to get well. The thing that was keeping me sick was my powerlessness to food and my unmanageability in my life, and powerlessness to a lot of things, but also this limited belief that I wasn't going to get well, and that there wasn't a loving God that wanted me to overcome my eating disorder. There wasn't that kind of, there wasn't any hope there. So this stuff about higher power and God, this is about, do I believe that there's hope? And the answer is today I do. I really do. And all I need is just that seed of willingness to believe that there's a power greater than me, and it wants me to get well. I did the same thing that Paul did. I wrote a list of what I wanted God to be for me, and what I wanted God to do for me. And in writing that, I realized that, I need hope. I need hope and I need help. And me as a higher power, me as a God controlling everything, I wasn't having all the things I needed. And my life wasn't all the things I wanted it to be. And higher power is not like Santa Claus or Father Christmas, right? But it's like a seed of hope. It's a seed of, there's a good force in the world that believes I can work. And I'm not an accident, and I deserve to have peace in my life, and I deserve peace from the food. Also, another really important thing when I was building a relationship with a higher power was this idea of doing away with ideas that weren't working, old limited ideas about what God was, or what the higher power had to be. We can toss it all away. We can toss it all away and start again. And this beautiful thing that it doesn't have to be the same for everyone, because we're not all the same. We're all kind of like millions of people, billions of people, and we're all different. Our brains are different. There'll be nobody like me exactly again. And so my higher power's kind of different. I understand it to be different. And I get to every day wake up and build a relationship with that different, and be like, hey, what have you got to show me today? Thanks for my morning. I'm open to whatever it's going to be. So that to me is quite cool. I'll leave it there.
Great. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Now we're going to go to our special guest, Nancy P., who's going to tell us how she recovered and the role or lack thereof that a higher power played in her recovery.
I finally recovered in 2017 into 2018 because I was going through the steps starting in December. So right around that time, the turn of the, after the first of the year. And I have not had to hurt myself with food since then, going on 3.5 years. And I'm really happy. So,
Thank you.
My path didn't have to be this way, but I did not know that, because everybody talks about God and I never really could identify. And I really tried. I mean, I super, super duper tried. And I'd hear great speakers and they'd be God, God, God. And I'd be like, I can't really identify. That was like saying, wear your shoes on the wrong foot. I never could identify. And, I spent almost 47 years trying to do that. I can't believe it when I say it like that, but I spent a long time trying to take a hammer to smash myself into a hole, that was the wrong shape. And I have had, fat years and thin months, and more fat years and more thin months. And then we had a family catastrophe that I couldn't eat fast enough to get in front of those feelings. And, it says in the book, here are some of the methods we tried. I tried everything except what worked. And so here's some of the methods that I tried were, more meetings, fewer meetings, different meetings, weigh and measure, don't weigh and measure, eat sugar, don't eat sugar, and eat this, don't eat that, don't eat this, all kinds of things like that. And my own perennial favorite was to get an additional sponsor, because I've talked to the same woman on the phone 5 days a week for 35 years. She's my dear friend. She was at my wedding. That was 34 years ago. She's my good friend. And she loved me when I couldn't love myself, but she couldn't help me. And when we had this family catastrophe, which was when my now 19-year-old daughter, but then about 15 years old, was cutting and burning herself, that's when my life really hit the fan. And I just couldn't stop eating. And I worked 6 miles away from our house, and I couldn't get to work without stopping twice to buy food. And so I was in my car sobbing one day, and was sobbing because I had just eaten a dozen donuts. And I was sobbing also because I had done the same thing the day before and the day before and the day before. And I knew I was going to do the same thing the next day and the next day and the next day. And I called a friend who I've known also for 40 years. I'm actually 61, not 29. And I called my friend who I love and who loves me. And I talked to her, and she said, Nancy, I haven't talked to you in so long. And I said, well, I hope we're still friends. And she turned me on to a meeting that I know Carol is familiar with called A Vision for You. And I dialed into that meeting on December 1st of 2018, and I have not had to hurt myself with food since that day. However, we're talking about agnosticism and Nancy P's discomfort with the God concept. And I got a fantastic sponsor who's not my friend exactly. In fact, she's not my friend. I love her, but she's not my friend. I also love my hairdresser, who's also not my friend, and my dry cleaner. They're not my friends. My sponsor is more like a business relationship. And the currency that I pay her is honesty and desperation to do whatever she says, desperation to do whatever she says. And I'm sitting there, we're approaching the 4th step, and I'm choking on my secret. I've got to tell her she's going to kick me out. She's not going to work with me anymore. And I finally confessed. I said in a whisper, I'm in my room where I am now, and we live in a Victorian with solid wood doors, and our doors are, thick and nobody can hear. And I'm choking on my secret, and I finally whisper, I don't think this is going to work for me. And she said, why not? And I said, because I'm not sure I believe in God, which was a massive understatement. And she said, well, don't worry about it. You haven't had a spiritual awakening yet. And that was like somebody used a secret key to open up this door to a room where the walls turned around and the floor slipped away and the ceiling changed. And it turned into, turned from a nightclub into a nunnery. That's what it felt like. And, it wasn't like I didn't believe in God. I sort of have a foot in both camps, because the only reason I'm not an atheist, to be perfectly honest, is that I might be wrong. And I don't want to be done and say, ooh, my bad, sorry, let me in anyways. But I don't like the word. I don't feel connected to it. And in the chapter of We Agnostics on page 47 in the book, it talks about, my sponsor said to me, you have to decide what you want God to be and what you want God to do for you. And I said, okay, for the first time ever, I'm going to do that. So I thought about it, and I said, I'm going to throw out everything I ever heard, thought, learned, was told, imagined, was near, perceived, everything about God, and throw it away. And what do I want God to be? And I said, first thing, not God. Don't like that word. Doesn't make me feel comfortable or serene. Okay, check, no God. Second, no knees. I don't like getting on my knees. It doesn't make me, I wasn't raised that way. It doesn't make me feel comfortable. I don't feel closer to anything except the floor. So, okay, check and check. No God, no knees. What do I want? And I thought about it from it really an open blank page. And I thought, well, I need to have something that I can embrace. And I said, well, I can embrace trust. And I thought of it like building a swing set. I had a big box of parts, and I took couple of them out and I bolted them together, and trust. And then I thought, and generosity, okay, still going well. Friendliness, kindness, loving, patience, integrity. Okay, I jumped on my swing set, it held my weight. And compassion and sympathy and empathy. And then I sort of got tired and I said, like any good direct marketer, and I reserve, anything else I want to do at any time, I can change it or amend it at any time, because I'm not doing this for anybody except for myself. And then what do you want this thing to do for you? And that was much easier, because I was still sort of like, I didn't want to have it be a big, involved, heavy thing. I just wanted it to be work for me. I wanted it to work because I was desperate to get better. And so I thought about it and I thought, what do I really want? And I thought, make me into those things. That's what I wanted to do for me. And thus was my cornerstone set in place, and no later vicissitude has shaken it. And I would go back to page 28 in the book, which is so important to me. Or, I mean, it's just like the second best page after page 47, where it says, what seemed at first a flimsy reed has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. A new life has been given us, or if you prefer, a design for living that really works. So then a couple of lines down from there, it talks about the varieties of religious experience indicates a multitude in ways in which men have discovered, and I changed the word from God to a multitude of ways in which men have discovered a design for living that really works. So I feel as though I don't really need that word. I don't really think of it, I'm not into this creative intelligence or spirit of the universe. I don't like anything like that. And I actually sponsor some very religious people. I've sponsored 2 Orthodox Jews, and I speak regularly to a very fundamentalist Christian woman from like Oklahoma or someplace that's very conservative. And they ask me, what do you believe in? And I explain, this conception that I have, and they say, well, that's what God is. And I say, yeah, I get that a lot, but I just don't see it that way. And guess what? The book never says that I have to believe anything. In fact, it says on the top of page 47, when therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. And this is the key thing. This applies too to other spiritual expressions, which you find in this book. This chapter gives me permission to be agnostic and to be a fully functioning member of Overeaters Anonymous and to enjoy my recovery. And so, I'll wrap up in 1 second. I'll just say that, this page is so critical to me. It's comforting to learn that we can commence on a simpler level. And it says earlier, if we wish to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited it was. And I say, and my note here says, or not limited, because I don't feel limited. I don't feel as though I need anything else. I mean, yeah, I'm willing to stretch for more, but I'm not going to throw my back out just to try to fit myself into that God-shaped hole that doesn't work for me. And going back to page 28, I don't mean to jump around, but going back to page 28, it says in this, where it says about, ways that in which men have discovered a design for living that really works. Just below that, it says faith can be acquired. It doesn't say where. And so to me, I joke and say I could probably get it on Amazon if I can figure out the right words to put in, the right sequence. So religious is a convenient path, but it's not the only path. And Nancy P., I had to take a spiritual machete and bushwhack my way through the jungle to get my own path to get to where I want to be. I live right, a half a mile away from Route 95 that goes from Maine to Florida. And if I want to go to New York City, I can go, it's a straight shot. I can be there in 4 hours. It's 200 miles away. Or I can go to Maine first and then go, or I can fly to LA and then fly back. I mean, I could go to China. The book says I can do whatever I want and nobody can tell me different. So to me, that day that I called my friend was the day that I surrendered, or I should say I surrendered, but it was more like I had this big, bulky, flat screen TV, big and bulky, but not that heavy. And I lugged it around until I read just one more page. I promised my last one. On page 52, where it says, when we saw others solve their problem by a simple reliance upon the spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting the power of God. Here's the sentence. our ideas did not work, but the God idea did. And that's step 2. And that, my note to myself says, it worked for them. Maybe it will work for me. And this was like a tiny green bud on a tiny seed. But yet it worked. And today, I have, like I said, no later vicissitude has shaken it. I have surrendered. And the only thing that I worry about today is how spiritually awake am I? Because I can't grow unless I'm awake. I can't do anything unless I'm awake. And how surrendered am I? And I keep both of those things nice and plump. And with that, I'll pass. Thank you so much, Carol, for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And back to the cat as a higher power issue really quick before we go. A long time ago, I came in, my first program was Al-Anon. And I remember I would go to a lot of AA meetings. And I remember in Al-Anon, a lot of people were like, yeah, it can be anything. It could be a cat. It could be whatever. And I was like, yeah, man, it could be a cat. It could be whatever. And then at an AA meeting, this little squat old alcoholic guy stood up and said, you can't have a cat be your higher power. Read the steps, read the steps. Came to believe that a cat is going to restore me to sanity. Get out of here. So like all I say is whatever your higher power is, read through the steps and make sure it fits in. So I always love when I look at steps. I almost always, when I hear people read the steps, always hear the cat. So like made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of my cat as I understand him. Admitted to my cat, to myself, and to other human beings the nature of my wrongs, was ready to have my cat remove all my defects of character, humbly asked my cat to remove my shortcomings, continued to take first. So whatever your higher power is, just run it through the steps and see if it makes you laugh, you may want to try a different higher power.
Totally. I get the kind of problematic area of if your higher power is one thing that could die.
Right.
Because you might it might be a bit tricky. But maybe it's maybe it works if it's cats, plural. I don't know.
Maybe if it works for you, that's great. If it were, for me, the concept of an ocean, like I'm not going to turn my willpower over to an ocean. The ocean's not going to help, so, but if it does make sense to you, I guess I am judging. So I can't say I'm judging, but who am I to judge? But I'm a sick person and that's why I'm in program. So I'm judging, but who am I to judge?
Well,
So
clearly cats have 9 lives, Rebecca. So
yeah, of course, right. Yeah, that's true.
See, I've already, my whole thing's been shot down already before the podcast is even over.
But see, this is the beauty of it. Like it doesn't matter from kind of like between us, so long as we've got something,
Yeah. And you know what? If you recover with a cat, I guess my honest answer to a sponsee would be, if that really brings you peace and recovery, then go for it. But I hear a lot of things in program. You're going to hear a lot of stuff in program. You're going to hear a lot of things said to you as if they are fact, from a lot of different people. Sometimes people you respect, sometimes people you don't respect. It's almost harder when it's from someone you really respect, because then you really have to come to grips with why you seem to feel something so totally different. But the thing that's going to help you navigate so much of your program is going to be having a solid, grounded belief in a power greater than yourself that you trust, and that's how you're going to be able to navigate. At least for me, I guess I'm speaking to you, but I'm saying for me, that's what helps me navigate all the noise and all the static and all the opinions, is to be able to turn to a higher power that I trust. And my higher power changes a lot. From day to day. Sometimes it is a God similar to my childhood, and sometimes it's more the universe, and sometimes it's more the power of the group. There is definitely a power in group conscience and in a group of people. So whatever works for you. All I can say is, if you're suffering and you're having trouble, don't let the God or the higher power thing keep you from getting this recovery thing. It's out there. Find a sponsor who will work with you and help you figure something out for you that works for you and makes sense for you. There are a lot of very spiritual atheists in program. And so being spiritual doesn't have to mean you have a God. And you know, I would just invite anybody to open up their thinking and their parameters of understanding, and not to feel like just because you're an atheist or an agnostic that you can't be spiritual in some way or have a spiritual existence. You know, there's something going on when we close our eyes and we're alone. You know, there's something in there. There's something that happens. And figure out what that is for you. What's in there when you close your eyes? What's going around in there? Who's talking to you? You know, like who I heard somebody saying, like, they had a thought and then another thought said that thought's crazy. So where's the other thought? Who's that other thought coming from telling me that the first thought's crazy? You know, where are all these thoughts? So I don't know. I certainly don't have all the answers. That's the one thing I know. So that's it. That's all the time we have for today with the higher power, although that topic could be talked about endlessly, right? We hope you come back next week. I think we're going to be discussing abstinence. Does it change? What is total and complete abstinence? It's a topic a lot of people talk. What's the difference between abstinence and a food plan? You know, so we're going to just touch on that with our tiny little addict brains and mouths and the help of our higher powers. So thanks so much to Rebecca, Paul, Nancy P. Don't forget that we want to hear from you. Again, the email address 164forever@gmail.com, along with all the other information mentioned, is going to be in the description below the podcast so that you can just copy and paste or click or whatever you want. Be sure to subscribe if you like what you're hearing. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the Podbean, and join the WhatsApp group if you want, if you feel like it. If you're harming yourself with food, we found a solution for us. It's working for now, one day at a time, right? And there's a lot of meetings that you can also find at oa.org. That's where I went to find a lot of meetings to begin with, and meetings are where all of us met each other. So that's a good thing, right? And again, we don't represent Overeaters Anonymous or any other 12-step program. We're just three ding-dongs that have computers and Wi-Fi and don't want to harm ourselves with food anymore, and just wanted to sit here and talk because you know why? Because it helps us. Most of all, it helps us, and we need to
Absolutely.
right? We need it. I know I could
We're
use
here.
all the help, right? I need all the help I can get. So hopefully we'll talk to you, or you'll be back next week to hear us talking about abstinence and all that goes with that. And just have a wonderful day. We hope to hear from you.
Bye. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks a million. Thanks.